Welcome to Woman Power. I'm your host, Lisa Diane Wedgeworth. Welcome to Woman Power. I'm your host, Lisa Diane Wedgeworth. Today, our conversation is centered around women in comedy. There is a lineage of stand-up comics who laid a foundation for the next generation of funny women. A few who come to mind are Moms Mabley, Jean Carroll, Marsha Warfield, Joan Rivers, Margaret Cho, Whoopi Goldberg, and Lily Tomlin. This is not a definitive list by any means. Joining me in the studio today are Annick Adelle, a comedian originally from Germany who performs regularly at comedy clubs in Los Angeles and San Francisco, and now tours all over the country as a headliner with observant, witty, in-the-moment wit. Annick is a comedian to watch, says her mom. And straight out of Compton is Cheri Hodge, a comedian who mixes world-weary cynicism with offbeat whimsy to bring you funny, reflective stories about her life. She is also the creator and host of the podcast Nerd Outta Compton. Ladies, thank you so much for being with me today. I had the pleasure of seeing both of you perform at the Ladies Room Comedy Show at the Westside Comedy Theater. We'll talk later today to Jen O'Donnell, the co-creator and host of that show. I'm curious, what led both of you to being stand-up comics?
Mine isn't as hopeful at first. I started in high school. Oh. I didn't even think I would ever do stand-up. I used to love watching stand-up comedy, but I thought this is insane. Like hoping that this group of people likes to hear what I'm about to say and talk about.
Right.
Like that sounds impossible. But I was in high school and everything else I was doing, it wasn't really up my alley or wasn't working out. And I was like, doesn't hurt to try this. And then I did. And so far, no one stopped me yet.
So when you tried this in high school, was it a class or?
No, the first time I did it, it was at a little audition at a comedy club. And then a month later, like a week or so later, they were like, oh, you want to do 3 minutes or so at a show? And I was like, sure, I'm prepared for that.
And you weren't, and it just took off though?
Yeah, it just kept going from there.
That's great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with starting in high school. Tiffany Haddish started in high school, right? Mm-hmm. And Annick, what about you?
So I'm from Germany originally, and it doesn't exist that much in my country for some reason. And then I moved to the States, and I had 4 weeks off of work, and I was like, I'm gonna do stand-up, because I've been fantasizing about it ever since I read the biography by Ellen DeGeneres. And then I was like, here we go.
So were there any comedy influences for you in Germany when you were growing up?
Not German ones, I don't think. I mean, there's Mardi Gras and all that, but not really like stand-up comedy as a culture. Mm-hmm. So I was really excited to learn that it's an actual job here in the States.
That's great.
Yeah.
So both of you address culture and identity in your work. Cheri, as a nerd coming from Compton, and there are so many implications with that, right? And for some people, maybe nerd and Compton are polar opposites. Mm-hmm. What inspired you to look at your life and address it with comedy?
I would say that, just coming from like the childhood that I've had, a lot of times the best way to kind of address those things when you don't have an outlet or something is just to make fun of it, you know? Sometimes it's just like the best you can do in a situation to just like make it light and keep going.
Right.
So I'm just always used to just making jokes of things and just, I would say just coming from there, like just watching. And it's also just like, just things like that happen every day, you know? Like either, not that everything goes wrong during a day or anything, like, but also just that, just observing things is always just like a fun thing to do, and just like seeing it from other people's perspectives and expressing that and expressing my own, and then just having other people either connect with that or just be fascinated by that. And in a way, it kind of made me more open in learning with other people.
Right. Well, you said you started taking, you did stand up, or you started when you were in high school. Do you recall prior to that, whether it was around your family or friends, as you're growing up, being funny or telling jokes and having people respond to your sense of humor and comedic skills?
So I do remember as like a kid doing those long-winded jokes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those where it's like, am I going to really sit here and listen to this for the next 4 minutes?
Right.
But I also was where I was like, it's not that funny. I would say I grew up watching a lot of just late night comedy stand-up. Mm-hmm. You know, that was just on all the time. So I was always fascinated by that. Everything that I watched was just like, you know, just doused in humor. Yeah. Like there was just always something to be had, especially because I didn't take many things seriously, you know.
Well, it's great to be aware of, even at a young age, that you're observant and you're really thinking about your life and that you're aware of having some sense of humor, right? It's important for a young person. Annick, can you recall an early memory when you began to use comedy to address both being German and a member of the LGBTQ community?
Yeah, sure. I think when I started, people would respond to my looks and they were like, are you gay or just German? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to use that. And so now it's becoming my opener in a way. Right. You know, people are like, I'm not gay if you think that, I'm just German, and people laugh, and I'm like, I almost get offended, you know. but then every time I go back to Germany, I'm like, yeah, all the women kind of look gay. So it's an outlet for stereotypes, but you don't want to be too, you know, hacky in that regard. Yeah. But then still tap into things that are true with stand-up. And so, you know, being gay can be funny and the stereotypes are funny, but you're also suffering a lot. So to combine the two is, I think, the sweet sauce or the secret sauce for good comedy, I think.
Right, because that's the kind of the meat of what comedy is, right? You are looking at yourself, as you said, you're looking at your own life, right? You're looking at yourself, your own circumstance, whether it's something dealing with the physical, where you're from, accent or something, making observations about that in the real world, even how others perceive you, and bringing humor to it in some way, right? I'd love for both of you to share your process in mining personal experiences and archiving those experiences that become part of your stand-up. What is your process?
So for me, the process is either when I see something funny that I think I have to talk about this, and then to Cheri's point, something that you observe in a way that others don't observe it, and then share that. But mostly it's about what you experience. So I was at a retreat recently, and I was sitting in a hot tub, and this couple started making out, and I was like, that's how I'm gonna get pregnant, you know? And then I made a joke out of that, because that's, you know, some people can relate, some can't, but I think it's mostly real life. And then a lot of it is really just trauma too, you know, but like make it funny and in a way to cope with it. So I think you have to dig deep to find the trauma in you, but then try to make it funny. And yeah, but mostly real life situations.
What about you, Cheri?
I just love writing, and I agree with Annick with when it comes to like just like these weird life experiences. Something's just always going on, like, I don't know, just almost breaking into the wrong apartment for someone, or I don't know, puking into a trash can full of bees, or, you know, just a Tuesday, you know, and you guys get it. And just stuff that happens like that. People are like, no way, that happens. And I'm like, is this not universal? Do people not? And then there's also, sometimes I work backwards with my jokes, because sometimes either I'll hear something or I'll think of something that I really enjoy, and it's like I will make a whole joke because I just want to say this one statement. Right. Like I will work on find out the punchline. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna create this whole world, this whole joke around it sometimes, just so I can get to that point, because I'm excited to say that.
So are you guys carrying around notebooks? Are you writing down your jokes and your observations, saying them or typing them in your phone? How do you catalog all of this?
I use the phone a lot. Like you should see my voice memo history. I like even when I'm on the road and traveling, I'll just hit record and I'll babble in my own car. But sometimes, most of it to me comes when I talk to people and it turns out to be funny, and then I just take out my phone and, oh wait, I need to write this down.
Yeah.
So.
What about you?
Same, I do all of it. Sometimes I have like 3 or 4 journals. None of it is organized, which is unfortunate. It should be. I have like 4 different journals. Like if I find one, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write into this. Or I'll voice memo, voice note, like just random notes on my phone. Sometimes, like if I just have a scratch paper next to me, I'm writing it on there. Sometimes I'll talk to friends and I'm like, oh, that's pretty funny, and I'll just write that down as well.
Nice.
I would say the worst times though are just like when you're about to go to bed, and I've been told like you have like, don't make that as an excuse to not write something if you think of something. And I'm like, okay, and I write it. And the next morning, and I read it, I'm like, this isn't funny at all.
But as you were going into REM sleep, it was very funny, right?
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is gonna kill.
And I think there's also an element of discipline. Like every morning I wake up and I write for 45 minutes. Like it's the artist's way or whatever you want to call it. But
the morning pages.
There you
right?
go.
Yeah.
And I think not a lot of funny stuff comes out of it, but it's good to just have that practice.
Yeah, because it's great because that's the purpose of those pages, right? To get out all of that information, and then from that you can pick and choose whatever you need for your work. Annick, comedy exists in every culture, yet it is not universal because of language and culture. Have you had to make many adjustments for your American audience?
I did. Let me try to be polite, as in I think some audiences you have to adjust just because you don't know what kind of background they have or what kind of education they have, what knowledge can you think that they have. But also definitely the attention span is very short in some areas in this world, and so you have to like punch. Whereas in Germany, I do comedy in Germany now too. They like stories, and they want to like to be taken through they want to get to know you first. They won't laugh. They'll clap a lot, like that. So but because I started in the U.S., I almost feel like right away I was learning the American way. And I never learned the German way and then had to adjust, if that makes sense.
So this is interesting. So when you're, in the United States, not all, but some of your jokes, especially initially, were about you being German and the way you look.
Yeah.
When you go to Germany, what do your sets consist of? Is it about your experience in the United States? Or?
Yes, but then also, like everybody, like all of us, we have certain things that lend themselves to be topics in your comedy, but then at some point you're like, I don't want to just talk about being German. I don't want to just talk about being gay. But you want to find, Target, am I right? Or, stuff that's universal, and how can you make that funny, And so in Germany, yes, sure, I'll talk about America and Trump and all that, but I also try to talk about what's happening in Germany.
Right. Cheri, during your sets, you allow yourself to get really personal. You talk about your own experiences with depression. What gave you the courage to be so vulnerable?
What happened, how it started, I had a booker come up to me and say, you should think about talking more about your personal life so we could put you on some more shows. And I was like, okay. Like I was like given like an incentive. And at first I was like, I always just refrain from it, period. I just like kept things to myself. But I started doing it. And of course, like the worst thing to do, the worst feeling is when you express yourself like you're being vulnerable on stage as a comedian, and then no one laughs. Yeah, and then it's like, like it feels like maybe I'm also not over it, maybe, or something, or they might have some form of pity that I don't want them to have, And so I started that way, but the more I did it, the more I was like, okay, there's more material to come from here. It makes me happier that I am expressing this and that I can reflect on that in a way where I'm more the person in power now as well. So it was very enlightening to like be able to look at it in a way that still like gives me, I don't know, a different perspective now that I'm out of that situation. Well,
you know, a lot stand-up comedians tell jokes that are rooted in fiction, you know, to tell a funny story, and many, as we all know, have told stories or created sets based on their own experiences, and some of them are gritty and hard to digest, but just like you two are skilled at doing, they just at the end make that little switch, that punchline that we can all relate to, you know? And so it's brave for both of you to be honest in your work. What is the best advice you've received from a comedian that motivates you today? Either of you can answer this.
I think two things. One is, when you first start, you want to be funny immediately, but I think the first thing you have to learn is just be comfortable on stage. And so I think the best advice I've gotten is just for a year, you're not going to be funny. Just get up there and try to be comfortable. And then the second one, I think, and that's why I do comedy, is just try to be you. Like, just go to the center and presence, and almost like in meditation, right? To just find you and be present on stage. And that's when you're going to take everybody with you. So
what about you, Cheri?
I would say that especially when I first started, I was either just throwing stuff away, just like I'll have a joke and be like, okay, that's done. Or like, I'm like, I have to do it this way. I just thought there was like a certain way to do things, or that I would try to fit myself into. And so people would say just like, okay, you're trying too hard, first of all, you know? And I think one of the best pieces of advice was just going up there, just being yourself. And if that's like either not high energy, or if that's not, you know, always like, I'm like more of a fan of dark comedy, and sometimes I feel insecure about like, you know, not being able to provide things people are like more inclined to listen to in certain times. And so I guess it's just like being told constantly like, this is for you as well, you know, just to have fun with it. And I feel like a burden was like lifted off of my shoulders.
Because it's about the journey, right? You guys are creating jokes for us, but it's about you too, right? And enjoying this process. Ladies, thank you so much for being here and sharing in this conversation with me. I truly appreciate you both. Don't go away, as we'll continue our conversation with more funny women. Welcome back. I'm excited to continue our conversation, Funny Business, Women in Comedy, with two local comics. Jen O'Donnell, a stand-up comedian, writer, and development producer who is listed as one of the comedians to know in Hoo Ha Ha's comedy call-out list of November 2019. She is the co-creator and host of the Ladies Room comedy show that holds a monthly residency at Santa Monica's West Side Comedy Theater and features an all-women lineup with headliners featured on Netflix, Comedy Central, and Amazon. I'm also joined by Ginny Hogan, a writer, stand-up comic, and a contributor to The New Yorker, The New York Times, and McSweeney's, to name a few. Forbes recently profiled Ginny as a rising satire star. She's the author of Toxic Femininity in the Workplace, a book of humorous essays loosely based on men she worked with in the tech industry, who were, by and large, annoying. Jen and Ginny, what led each of you to comedy?
I was always just a funny kid. I grew up in an Irish Catholic family, funny storytelling family, funny women. It's just how you get through hard times, you know.
You?
I was working in the tech industry, and I was running a data blog about my online dating life, and it slowly morphed into being a humorous blog, and then the data analytics part kind of fell away, and that's how I started writing comedy.
I love it. So I'd love for each of you to recall a memory where you had to navigate some successful situation for yourself.
I think I've always found comedy to be a really powerful tool because it gets people to understand what you're talking about really quickly in a comfortable way. I have a memory of being in high school in an AP Psych class. I was not the smartest kid in my class, but I was the funniest, so that should probably tell you everything. You know? And I remember my teacher we were talking about sex, and he opened it up to the class and he said, "Why do people have sex?" And it was dead silent. And I raised my hand and I said, "For money." And he pulled me aside, and I thought I was going to be in trouble. And he was like, "I really appreciate you just bursting that bubble, because it allowed us to have a serious conversation that we all need to have, because we're all human beings."
Right.
So I think I recognize that power, and that's something that I still try to take with me as an adult.
I love it.
Yeah.
What about you, Ginny?
I was a math major, and I was with all boys all the time, and I didn't really like it. And I noticed that the women's restroom in the math building didn't have toilet paper ever. So I started to make it my like crusade to get more toilet paper and to steal the toilet paper out of the men's stalls. And then I wrote this funny satirical fellowship application about how I was trying to solve the lack of women in STEM issue by stealing toilet paper. And that was kind of but you know, by the end of it, there was more toilet paper in the women's restroom. So that was kind of the goal there.
I'm really interested in your work being informed by personal experiences. You both have worked in predominantly male environments, yet have taken different routes to address your complex experiences. Jen, you co-created the Ladies' Room with Jesse Stegner, which, what experiences motivated the two of you to launch that platform?
I think, comedy especially is so male-dominated. Entertainment really in general, up until a very short time ago was. And my co-creator and I, Jesse, we met in a women's comedy contest. So we always thought it was ironic that we met in a place where women were supposed to compete. And we, neither of us won the contest, but like the real treasure was our friendship, and we started that show. And I joke about it when I do the Ladies' Room show in my monologue. I say that I was on a comedy lineup once where there were 4 men named Josh, and that was 4 more Joshes than needed to be on the show. Which truthfully, you need one Josh, right, to do comedy. But 4 Joshes aren't going to have much of a different perspective, really, in life. 4 white guys named Josh, So Jesse and I got together, and we had fun being together and writing comedy together. And we thought, we're always dreading going to these shows because we feel like the only woman in the room or the only woman at the table. And what if we could just change that experience and give a lot of women opportunity and a platform, and really make it a priority to book people with diverse perspectives and give them a platform to talk about things that are important to them through the lens of comedy, which gets people on board so much faster.
I love it. And the Ladies' Room exclusively books women?
We do.
Why is that necessary, and why was that important?
Yeah, people will say to me, well, what if there was a comedy lineup with all men? And I'm like, what do you call the last 50 years?
Right.
So I think that we do, the idea of doing an all-women show is to make up for lost time in a way. It also, I think, what's important is that it gives not just the women who are comedians opportunities, it gives the audience an opportunity to hear from women's perspectives that they have really been closed off from for a long time. So it's not just about giving women an opportunity to speak, it's about giving an audience a chance to understand people through humor. So, I always say that, when a woman and a man go to a comedy club and a woman is laughing at a man's perspective, she's laughing because she's had to spend her entire life understanding men's perspectives to survive. So, she will just laugh because she gets it. Whereas men will come to the ladies' room, and we say the ladies' room, everybody's invited to the ladies' room. So, women can come because it's a fun, safe space where you feel camaraderie, but men can come because all of a sudden they're laughing at something that 50% of the world is experiencing that's not been in their mindset at all. They've never really had to. So they haven't read books by us. They haven't, watch movies by us. They haven't seen as much comedy. So it's important for a lot of women to have that opportunity.
And I can attest, that's how I met the two of you. I did attend one of the shows at the ladies' room, and the house was packed, equal amounts of men and women, and everyone laughing. It was hilarious and funny, and we'll definitely make sure we share it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. Ginny, your book, Toxic Femininity in the Workplace, brilliantly confronts office gender politics with humorous yet unfortunate endings. What inspired this writing?
Yeah, so I wrote a short piece that is in the book called Examples of Toxic Femininity for the Workplace, and I wrote it kind of at the start of the Me Too movement when everyone was talking about toxic masculinity. And I used to work with all men, and I thought of kind of all of the times in which, or sort of all of the stereotypes about the way that women behave in the workplace relative to men, and imagined what could go wrong basically if it were all women, but it was all stuff like the women are listening too closely or something. So this book kind of tries to tackle like behaviors that are sort of attributed to either gender within the workplace or to any gender within the workplace, and mostly takes aim at men who are working in a male-dominated workplace basically, and trying to kind of make fun of the things that they're known for doing and the experiences that I had working with all men.
Well, they're hilarious. I read them. I looked it up online and read it on thenewyorker.com, and it's in your book as well.
Thank you.
And it's very funny.
Thank
very
you
funny.
so much.
So where can we find you guys? What are the two of you working on currently?
I work in reality television. I consult. I also develop and pitch my own projects. So a lot of things I'm working on are more, skewing for women audiences, involving humor, but also, everything from subcultures to all types of worlds that I would work in within reality television. I have a web series called The Internet According to Jen. And yeah, you can find everything on JenO'DonnellComedy.com.
Wonderful. And Ginny, what are you currently working on?
I have a few projects. I'm working with Audible on pitching some scripted podcasts. I'm working on a new book that's sort of a little bit more personal than this one, but it's similarly like satire and personal essays. And I'm doing a lot of stand-up, and you can find everything I do on my Twitter. I'm Ginny Hogan _, and I tweet a lot, so there's a lot of content there.
Excellent. And what advice would the two of you give an aspiring comedian? I'd love to hear one to do, something that they must do, and something to avoid.
I would say, this is probably harder advice, but I would say try to make friends, especially for women. Nowadays, there's more opportunities for multiple women to be at the table. But, I think it's sort of like enjoy the ride and try to build this network of people, because we all don't know where this is going. But it could go the way that, there are a lot more women seated in positions of power. And so I think having strong friendships and just good relationships in general is a good thing for women in entertainment.
And what is something that a budding comedian just should never do?
Date another comic. No. I think having comedy be your only thing, I think there's a lot of misery when it's a little too high stakes. So, and I think it also just helps you to have something weird that comes along with the fact that you're a stand-up comic, So have a weird hobby, and, don't have stand-up be the only thing.
Right. What about you, Ginny?
I think in terms of what to do, I would say just be willing to put something out there, even if you're not sure that it's good, particularly if you're going to an open mic and you don't know if a joke is good. Something I've learned is that people don't really remember bad jokes. They only remember you if you're good. So if you go on stage and you try new stuff and it doesn't work out, no one's really going to remember it. But if you get something good out of it, then people will remember that. Same thing with kind of like posting stuff on social media. Just kind of try to be creative, even if you're not sure that what you've posted is funny. In terms of what not to do, I would agree with dating comics. I've done it. It has ended badly. I also think like comparing yourself to other people, and I know that's the hardest thing to not do, but there's so many different ways that someone can be successful that it's very easy when someone gets one opportunity that you wanted to wonder why you didn't get it. But there might be a better opportunity out there for you, or just a different one. And it's just, it is a very competitive industry, and it's very easy to compare yourself to other people, but it also, I think, takes you down sort of like a negative hole.
Well, we have a treat for everyone. We're going to read excerpts from Toxic Femininity in the Workplace. Would you like to start?
Jane writes, "Do not eat on her salad," and no one eats it. Then, because the salad remains in the fridge for too long, it goes bad, and an ant colony forms around it, destroying the fridge.
Jessica begins speaking, and no one speaks over her. She didn't actually have an ending for her presentation prepared because she expected to be interrupted. She is mortified.
Everyone pushes his or her chair in at the end of the day. The cleaning crew is flummoxed. Ladies, thank you so much. We have toxic femininity in the workplace, in the house, and it's been such a pleasure having both of you here.
This has been so fun.
Thank you.
Thank you
It's been really
so much.
great. Thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful day. It's really been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
time.
Thank
I
you.
love this show.
I'm really glad you're here.
We'll
Check
come
it
back
out.
anytime.